You're listening to In Sickness, a podcast about caregiving with Allison Breininger and Justin Bima.
Good morning, friend.
Good morning. It's a big episode today. It's our 50th.
50. Now, you promised me 6. And here we are.
We're doing well.
At
so
50.
That's great.
Oh, I love it. And I just want to say quick that we've gotten a lot of kind of fan mail lately from people and how it just makes our day when we get those things. So if you're listening and you have anything you want to say, just know that every private message or email that you send us, we love and we pass back and forth between the two of us. And it just, makes this so much more meaningful. So thank you, fans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you doing lately, Allison? I know that there's some stuff going on over there.
Yeah. So I'm on day 9 of COVID.
Oh.
And it's so bad. It's just really bad. You know, we went to the conference. The conference ended up being a super spreader event. So I have some feelings about that. Even though I was masked the whole time, did all the things, but masks were not required. And, I'm not blaming anybody. It's hard to know what to do in the world these days. But in the end, 10 people with FA or their spouses or children got it. Half of the staff, a board member, and a scientist. So yeah, a week ago on Tuesday morning, I woke up feeling so terrible that I was like, this just has to be the thing, and stuck the thing up my nose. And I don't know if you've done the tests before, but the liquid goes across the little thing.
Yeah.
The second it touched the spot, the line showed up.
Oh.
There was no waiting 15 minutes for this. So I have been in my basement since then for 9 days. Glad we have a basement because there's a bathroom down here and a bed down here, and I can be separate from them. Since then, Maya has gotten sick. She sounds just like me, coughing, terrible. Her home tests have been negative, but we took her in yesterday because she was wheezy. And got a PCR that we're waiting for the results on. I don't know what different, how we would do anything differently if it's positive, but she's already stuck in a room. But
right.
That was a really hard caregiver moment.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't take her. And then I had to send Sean, and I didn't really want Sean to be in the car with her.
Right.
But we didn't really have a choice. My parents are out of town, and there's nobody else that I could really call and be like, do you want to get in a car with this contagious person? So there's been a lot of moments of that this week of me being in the basement, listening to hard things happen. Not hard things happening upstairs, but usually I'm running the ship, and to not be able to help. And then especially now with her not feeling well, to not really be able to help her. It's been really hard.
Yeah.
Really, really hard. So I haven't tested yet this morning, but I'm still, as of yesterday, was still testing positive and feeling lousy. And so it's been really hard. And, I think a big piece of it is, I think, the feeling awful, but then being so contagious.
Right.
And feeling like this thing that I've been trying to keep away from my husband for 2.5 years is now me. I am now the enemy.
Right.
And that feels really awful.
Yeah.
He miraculously still feels fine. I don't know if it's because he had the Evusheld.
Right.
Which was that extra thing. Or what, but as of right now, he still feels fine. But people have advised me that even after I get to day 10, maybe I can emerge from the basement, but should still be masked and should probably still sleep down here for a while, just because they're it keeps popping back and all that. And so it's just,
that's really hard.
It's a double whammy, feeling awful and not being able to comfortably live because you're contagious and all that. So it's been a bad couple weeks. But I'm here today this is kind of the first worky thing I've kind of done, just because I was I love you and being with you. And it's maybe it'll feel good to get in my thinking brain. So we'll see.
We'll see
how this goes.
Yeah. Well, I'm so sorry that, this is happening to you and your family. And I can't imagine. I mean, I can't imagine, but I understand the, how hard it is to be separate while you're going through this, and just on a human level to be isolated for 9 days or whatever it's been, but also when you're so involved with just the other people's lives in your house, and like also the caregiving. I mean, even without the caregiving part, this would be a stressful and difficult and hard situation. And so, I hope that, Sean continues to stay healthy from this, and that you guys in time can reunite and get the household back to kind of how it's meant to be.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So I apologize for my voice quality and all that today. I'm just gonna sip on my tea and do my best over here. So
we'll make it work.
Yes, we will. Enough about me. What's going on over there?
Well, I guess the big thing is that, I've been on this 12-week leave from work.
Yeah.
And that is rapidly coming to a close.
How many more days?
It is now Wednesday, and on Monday I'll be back in the office.
Oh, okay. That's
so
close.
It's very close, and I do have a lot of feelings about it. I'm not like, on the one hand, like I feel in a like significantly better place today than I did the day I left on this leave. Like mentally, I am in a much better place. It's also been just such a blessing to have like the work piece of life off my plate for so long.
Yeah.
Just to rest and allow my mind to rest from that.
Yeah.
But like that can't last.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I'm not thrilled about going back to work. But I'm mostly feeling kind of neutral. Like it feels like it is a thing that has to happen. There's no like I've just accepted that, like, okay, this is the next phase. Going back and kind of hoping to find the right pace for things, and kind of, I think the whole experience of like burning out and needing to take this break has been a good reminder of like making sure I find a good balance between work, between life, between caregiving. And so I'm hoping to, in the weeks and months ahead, to kind of be more conscious about that as I go back.
Mm-hmm. What might that look like?
I'm not really sure yet.
Okay.
I feel like I need to kind of be back at work and see how that feels, and kind of, just have all of the pieces back into my life.
Right.
And then just kind of try to be more intentional about where my energy goes, and kind of all of that. So that'll be an ongoing thing, I think. Yeah. But one of the things that I've been kind of thinking about as this break comes to a close is like rest was a big part of what I needed. Because I was exhausted. I was mentally exhausted. That was like, everything in your body is connected. So like that was bleeding over into feeling physically exhausted all the time, to the point where like before I took this break, like I would be done with work and I would just like crash on the couch and just kind of like sleep until like I had to make dinner. And like sometimes in the morning I would wake up, I would have breakfast and have like 20 minutes before work, and I would just like sit in the chair, put my head back, and like nod off until it was time for work. So it's like I was not doing well in that sense. So like rest was a thing I needed, but also I look back on this break, and it has felt incredibly restful. Like I feel like I have attained that. But also, like, I've been doing a lot.
Yeah.
I took that boat to Alaska. I've been out fishing a lot. I've been out birding. I've been, I did camping with my family. So there's been a fair bit of activity, and like thinking through that, like on the surface, that feels like maybe that's not compatible with this like needing rest. But I think that a lot of times when we think of rest, we're thinking of like physically tired, needing to like take a nap, that kind of thing. But there's so much more depth to rest, of like, I needed physical rest, I needed mental rest, I needed like emotional rest. And so for me, like that mental piece was needing to do things that could kind of occupy my mind enough that like the thoughts that had been like ruminating in my brain like didn't have room to latch on. So like that's where, going fishing, or whether that's just going for a walk in the woods, where there's like just enough input, just enough for you to do to kind of keep your mind going, but not just because sometimes if you're just like, I'm tired, I need to rest, and you're just sitting in a chair,
right?
Like your brain can just go.
Oh, yeah.
And so like that's not necessarily the most restful experience. So yeah, I've just been thinking a lot about like what rest is, what rest means to me, and like how we as caregivers are like definitely in need of it.
Right.
And how and why it's hard for us to feel that rested. So like,
yeah.
I'm curious, like, what is your, because I know that you are someone who is like an achiever kind of thing. Like you want to be doing
I
things.
am.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your relationship with rest?
Oh, that's such a good question. It's true, because there was a time when I took a month break.
Yeah.
And something I found myself doing in that time was like, how can I make this the most restiest, coziest moment?
Mm-hmm.
Like, even within my rest, I was trying to be an achiever, which actually in some ways worked well for me, because it sort of helped use my achiever stuff. So I would be like, okay, what's the coziest blanket and the best smell and the coziest animal and the, you know what I mean? Like the best socks and a candle. And like, I kept trying to come up with the like these situations in which, and so it was a good way to use my achiever skills. Because if I was just like, I'm just going to lie on the couch,
right,
I would be like, this is not enough. And so there's that. I think you're right. I'm terrible at rest, because I'm always feeling like I should be doing something.
Right.
And so this 9-day hellscape that I'm currently in has been quite a practice in that. And so I think a really interesting thing that happened with that was that a week ago on Tuesday, woke up, felt terrible, stuck the thing up my nose. It said positive. And it was like a switch flipped for me. Because the thing said positive, I threw a mask on my face. I gathered up a bunch of my stuff. I went to the basement and I just checked out. I just went to sleep.
Yeah. Right.
And it was so interesting. Like, I called my mom and she was like, well, are you mad about the conference? And I was like, I have no emotions. I'm like, maybe that will come later. I was like, right now I'm just here and I'm going to go to sleep. And it was this amazing sort of, it felt kind of freeing actually, because for like the first time in, I don't even know how long, it was like not it. Like, it was just like the positive test made it so that I could not do anything. And so typically, even if I am taking a nap on a regular day, my ear's always open, right?
Right.
For the dog, for Maya, for Sean, for the phone. And this was like, nope.
Right.
No, can't. And it actually felt amazing. And it felt like my brain just sort of, I mean, also I was sick, but it felt like my brain also was able to just sort of shut off. Like, I was not like, my mom's like, are you anxious? Are you worried? I was like, no, nope. Yeah. Nope. Because it was this sort of like,
it's like this ultimate permission to like,
right.
Not that I want you to have COVID to experience this.
Correct. Yeah. Right. It was exactly the ultimate permission. And I just like I even sometimes like I see Sean will sleep with like a pillow over his head. And I'm like, I could never do that because I always need to be listening. I always need to be aware. And down here, I was like, I can't. So the pillow goes on my head and I was like, whoa. So it was this really deep kind of rest. Yeah. You know, not just the physical piece, but the like literal, like flipping a switch off that I realized had been on for a decade. Yeah. Or longer. And so I think that's part of it. It's not just the sleeping part. It's not just the resting part. It's the constantly being on alert. Yes. Aware. The heightened awareness of being a caregiver. That part doesn't turn off. You know what I mean? Just because you might be taking a nap. Because I'm always sort of like half taking a nap. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that reminds me of something I was thinking about when I was walking Mosey yesterday. So like rest, we often like rest is treated like a verb, like I'm resting. That's a thing that you're doing. But thinking of rest as like a state of being a little bit. So like I'm an engineer, so this makes sense to me. But like there's like an object in like physics. If it's like at rest, like there's no external forces or anything acting on it. So like it's not, there's nothing doing anything to it. It's just at rest as just a state. So I think that like,
interesting,
you know, as humans, as caregivers, as everything, you know, we have demands on our time and attention. We have, you know, we're on alert, like you've said. There's just so much that's on our mind, responsibilities that we have. And I think for me, that's why things like going up into the mountains, like out of cell service range to go fishing, are such a like state of rest for me, because I'm like removing myself from, you know, for a time from any ability to respond to any critical things. I'm like getting away from all of those demands on my time and attention, and just like putting myself away from people, like miles from anyone else, and just like in the middle of like, it's just me.
Right.
And that's why I think those are such restorative experiences for me.
Right.
And so like understanding that, and like another example of that is like when I took that boat to Alaska, like I was, you know, most of that was out of cell range. Like I was just on a ship. There was nowhere to go.
Right.
You know, it's just like, I'm just cruising on this boat. But like that, and like even like spending a morning up in the mountains fishing, like that's not always something that's super accessible to us as, you know, people with caregiving responsibilities and work responsibilities and like all of that. So I've been trying to think about like, how do we bring that, especially like mental rest and even like emotional rest, maybe like, how do we get that in smaller, more accessible doses too?
Right.
And I don't know that I have an answer on that yet.
Right.
Yeah.
I just keep thinking about how last time we were together, you talked about like how you have been doing a lot of this outdoor stuff. And you're like, because if I had just laid on my couch for 12 weeks, that would not have been restful.
Right.
And so again, I think it's a shift for us to think about not just like resting is not just the body. Because I think that a lot, like I actually get, even on a regular day, like I get a lot of sleep.
Yeah.
Because I live with a person with chronic illness and a teenager, both of whom sleep a lot. So I am fortunate that like I also can get a lot of sleep. And so then sometimes I'm like, man, I'm so tired, but it's like, I'm not sleepy. Like I've slept enough, you know, and I sleep well. And so I think it's good for us to think about these other kinds of pieces. And many caregivers and parents don't have that luxury. Like they don't get enough sleep on top of it. Right. But I think that it's more than just like, oh, I laid on my couch. Because if, you know, you lay on your couch, but then you're scrolling and then you're this, you know, all those things, like that does not bring the peace. Right. Or even if you're lying on your couch, but then you're like, I'm taking a nap, but really I'm thinking about all the things I should be doing. That's not, you know, either. And so I think for you, a couple of things. One is that I hear you saying is that you're disconnected. Like it's almost like you're, I want to say passing the baton. Like that's sort of how I felt on Tuesday. Was I was sort of like, I'm passing the baton of like all the responsibilities are not me.
Right.
And because I could do that, like even sometimes if it's like a day and I'm going to take a nap because we have this rambunctious puppy, if I'm like, okay, Sean, you're awake, you got the puppy, I'm going to go take a nap, you know, like that kind of passing of the baton. So part of it is that, like, is there a way to just be like, not it,
right?
You know, either like I'm stepping away and I feel like everything's under control and I don't have to worry about it, or I've given the baton to someone else.
Right.
You know, I think that's a huge part of it. Cause I could have a whole beautiful spa day, whatever. But if I'm like the whole time, like checking my phone or like, are they okay? Or like it's, you have to have some of that, like things are under control.
Right.
Somewhere else. Like I don't need to be caregiving while I'm here.
Yes.
Mentally caregiving. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I have felt that in these 9 days that in the first couple, I was so sick and I was so whatever that I was just like, I'm not it. But as the days have gone on, I've gotten more like, oh, what is going on up there?
Yeah.
Oh, should I? Oh, you know, which is less restful. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, I don't know how that works for people. Right. But I think it's that, I think the first step is just recognizing how much we are carrying.
Yeah.
How much of our responsibilities are just like there in the front of our mind all the time, so that we can say like, okay, I'm going to go do this thing for the afternoon, or I am going to take a nap and I'm going to put it away. One strategy, I don't know if this would work for this, but something I try, and I'm sure we've talked about, is like, you know, putting it in a Tupperware container. And there were some times that I'm lying down here in bed that I'm up, you know, listening to a thing that's happening up there or whatever. And I was like, you know what? Not the time to worry about that. And not that I'm going to put that worry in a container, Tupperware container, put the lid on. Some other time, maybe I can think about that.
Yeah.
But like literally boxing up, you know, the thing that you're thinking about, and like, nope, I'm not going to bring that with me.
Yeah.
As I go into this nap, as I go into the spa, as I go to the mountains, as I, you know, take a walk, whatever it is. Because I think there's the act of going somewhere, but there's also the mindset.
For sure. I think one thing that I'm not necessarily good at, but I think could be helpful for some people with that is like we're carrying all of this stuff in our brains, like stuff we need to be checking on, stuff that needs to get done. And like putting that on paper, getting that out of your brain, putting that on a page. And it's like, okay, that is here.
Yep.
I can step away. It's documented. I don't have to keep holding that in my brain.
Yeah.
That, I don't know, maybe that would be a helpful way to, and I mean, you could, like you've said, you could literally take that. You could, or as an exercise, write down what like your responsibilities are, write it, put it in a Tupperware, put it in the freezer
literally,
or something.
Yes.
As like a exercise of like, I am setting that aside for this time. And it doesn't have to be, it could be 20 minutes.
Yep.
But I think finding a way to practice not having so much front of mind all of the time.
Yeah.
Because like, yes, there's things, there's the things that we're thinking about all the time with like scanning for, is our person okay? And the running of the household and all of that stuff. But there's also like, we've talked about decision fatigue. Yeah. Like we can just be worn down from like all of the decisions that we have to be making and like trying to figure out what the best options are. It could be like research that we're doing into the illness that our person has, because there's no one else to do that for some people, that like there's not big research dollars going into it. And it's like, feels like that's on you. And so maybe you're spending a lot of energy on that. So there's like all of these things that can be just like mentally draining.
Right. Right.
And so what I mentioned earlier is like things that can like occupy your mind just enough to keep you from like all of that stuff from just like spiraling in your head. And so like, yes, that can be going fishing. Yes, that can be, things like that. But there's also like, we've kept a puzzle going on our table here since the start of COVID.
Wow. Yeah.
And in the last week or so, like I've been doing that a little more actively. And that's for me, that can be a good thing to like, I can drop in for 10 minutes, do a little bit of work on the puzzle. And like, that's active enough mentally that I can not be thinking about other stuff.
Right.
That could be doing a crossword puzzle, something you pick up, or something that is as a habit, every day you work on the crossword puzzle, and that's maybe 30 minutes or something, but that's 30 minutes where your mind can just be at rest a little bit. And I don't know science. This is the science of the brain or something, but it feels like that could be like a actually helpful thing for your mind to like,
oh, for sure,
rest and rebuild. And
I'm
sure there's something there, but it could be knitting. There's lots of different things that, but I think, like we've talked about these micro moments of self-care.
Yeah.
Thinking about how you can rest and kind of find some sort of like neutral space to occupy yourself. Even for me, like a thing that can, especially if I'm like spiraling anxiously, like looking at the window, like observing what's around me, like just kind of making that an intentional exercise, like that occupies the mind just enough to kind of shift out of the like spiral sometimes.
Totally. Like they say, do the thing like 5 things you can see and 4 things you can smell and 3 things you can hear and that kind of thing. Yeah, for sure. Totally. Oh, so many good things you said. I wanted to comment on. Let me think 1 second. Oh, I was going to say when you said you don't know about the science of it.
Yeah.
I mean, meditation. Yeah. Right? That is the science of it, right? They say that, I think they say that, don't quote me on this, but then like meditating for X number of minutes can sometimes equal like X number of minutes of sleep. It can be that restorative. And so what I have found in the last, since the break I took, is I started doing, yoga at night and just like 10, 15 minutes, sweet little, it's nothing fancy, but I love it. And I think that is part of it, is that it's like I sit still and I breathe and it's like, and, she's guiding me through the breathing, and it's just really super basic, stretchy things.
Yeah.
But it feels so, so good. And it's not this like super active thing, but it just like takes enough of my brain that I have to like stay in it with her. And I'm breathing and I'm calm and it feels amazing. And same thing with meditation. Like sometimes I'm like, well, I'm not going to turn on the actual meditation. I'll just sit here and, breathe. I can meditate on my own. But that doesn't work, at least for me, because then pretty soon I'm like off in a place. Right. And when I actually turn on the meditation app and I'm guided to be breathing in that way and to be, focusing, and they'll say stuff like, if a thought comes up, just toss it to the side for a minute. It'll be there later, And so I feel so different when I do a guided meditation or when I do yoga than when I just am like, oh, I'm just going to sit here and breathe for a second, which is also it's powerful in its own way when that's when you can do. But I think that's a huge way. Like that's a brain, I don't want to say brain emptier. It's like a brain focuser, like my thoughts are able to go into that spot in a way that feels so good.
Right.
Feels so good. And so much more than if I just I'm going to just lie here for 20 minutes.
Right.
I need that kind of guidance. Otherwise my brain keeps going.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great point. I think, we're talking about what feels like a lot of like lofty sort of ways to like get into this restful state. But just thinking also that like, binging a TV show, watching your favorite movie again, playing a video game, like those can be ways to rest your mind too. Like it doesn't have to be this like, feel like this aspirational, like bettering yourself as a human kind of like thing to like find this rest. Like if going through some, reality TV or something for a while to kind of just like, this is occupying my brain. It's taking my mind off what's going on. Like that's, if that works, that's great. It doesn't have to be this big thing.
Right.
The other kind of rest that I was thinking about, and I don't know that I've kind of fully gotten my mind around it, is like emotional rest. Because I think, or I know that, as caregivers, we have a whole host of emotions that we're holding and processing and going through all of the time. Like there's waves of grief that come again and again and again. There is just the like worry and anxiety, and there can be moments of joy too, but it's just like we're experiencing wide ranges of emotions and just a lot, I think. And so what does it mean to like allow your emotional state to rest? And I think I've been thinking about this, and I think at least as far as I've gotten is I think that you have to, or for me at least, this may not, this, what's true for me doesn't mean that that's how it works for everybody, is like, as long as I'm holding things and haven't like let myself go through the process of feeling them and letting them run their course, if I'm bottling them up, like that's going to prevent me from like resting emotionally, I think. Like it almost feels to me like it's that state once you've like there are times when I can feel that like grief is bubbling up and it's just like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. But like, once I have that, I'm like, okay, this is coming. This is happening. We're just going to like, whether it's a couple hours or a couple days, like we're just going to feel it all. Like it's on the other side of that somehow that system of your body or something can be returned to its like restful state for a time. And I don't know if that any of that resonates with you or what your thoughts are on like the emotional piece, because that's also something where we're carrying and feeling a lot as caregivers.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me think back to the Tupperware again, right? Like I think about sometimes, and this sounds weird, but I think sometimes I feel the best in emergency mode because I just am like, okay, everything else that I was feeling before cannot be here right now.
Right.
And I'm just on.
Yeah.
And all I can do is just like, here we go. We're going to the emergency room. We're going to the like hospital, like there's something about that switches on.
Right.
Where it's sort of like all the other emotions, you don't get to be here right now because we're just on.
Right. It's like the body switches kind of into that like survival adrenaline. Like we're just focusing on this situation. Like everything else is taking away from that. So let's just go.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's something, because in the last, year or whatever, I've been feeling way more of my feelings, that there's something actually kind of lovely about going into that survival mode where I had been before because you don't feel all the things. You just do.
Right.
Right. And so, but as we know, we also then have to feel the feelings at some point. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that there are like I one time had to go into lead a Zoom call and all these terrible things were happening. And I like literally drew a picture for myself of the containers on a bookshelf of like, we cannot deal with this. We cannot deal with this, and put the things in a container.
Right.
And then drew a picture of myself over here on the Zoom. And I was like, I'm going to be over here doing this. They're going to be over there. We're separate right now. You know what I mean? And that helped my brain in that moment to separate. But I do always wonder about that when people talk about like, oh, I'll just put that in a Tupperware container. When do you open the container?
Right.
So like you said, well, maybe I'll take a couple of hours or a couple of days to grieve, right? I think that's the hard part, is to be like, do I just say, okay, now's the time? And like, when do you ever really want to do that? And sometimes is it like, are you ready for that?
Yeah.
And so that's the thing I always sort of am like, we always say, if you don't deal with it, it's going to come out sideways. Right. But it's sort of like, well, how do we deal with it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How do you just say like, okay, now it's time?
Well, yeah. And for me, it's less like, okay, I don't have anything on the calendar today. Let's grieve today. But it's like, I can tell when those feelings are bubbling up.
Yeah.
And I know what it feels like to be like, no, that's not, we're going to tamp that down. And so like making sure that there are times when I don't do that. And if it's things are welling up, let them well up.
Yep.
Just let the wave of emotion wash over you as it kind of is naturally happening. And I guess that, there are times when that doesn't, that's not going to work with what's going on in your life that day, maybe. And so it's not like we can't always do that, but and it's not something that I necessarily think that I'm great at, but I think it's something that I know is, I need to make sure that I do feel these feelings from time to time.
Yeah, for sure.
And to let that part of me speak. To go back to your boardroom analogy, like, grief is at the table, and anxiety is at the table, and worry and joy is at the table.
Yeah.
All of these different emotions. Sometimes anger could be resentment.
Yep. Yep.
All of these different things, and to let them all have their moment. Because I feel like we hold tension in our bodies when we don't let all of those things out. And until we can release that, I think rest is not, you're not going to get the same level of like rest.
That's so good. I have, sometimes with my therapist, when we're talking about the boardroom, she'll just be like, why don't you go in and take roll call?
Yeah.
And it's really powerful to just be like, okay, close my eyes and just be like, okay, who's here? And be like, oh, I didn't realize you were here, And so to sit and to think like, okay, who wants to show up, and be like, oh, I didn't realize that. So, I mean, I think therapy is one place, right, where you can be like, okay, here's this thing that's happened, and I've been keeping in a container. I got 50 minutes with you, so let's talk about this. Like that's a really nice guided, supportive place to do that. But I think the boardroom thing too, of like, okay, emotions, like who's here, who's showing up, what do y'all need from me right now?
Yeah,
can be so powerful. I keep forgetting about my beautiful boardroom, which is so sad because it's so helpful.
Right.
Yeah, to say like, what is it that's going on in there? What do you need from me? Yeah. So I wonder about, we're kind of talking about this in a lot of different ways, but I wonder how we can make this practical, both for caregivers themselves and for supporters who might be listening. Like, what are actual things, because, most of us are not fortunate to live in the beautiful state of Washington, so we can't just go like fishing and birding.
Right.
It's like as much as you do, which is so wonderful.
Yeah.
So what does that look like for the rest of us, and what are some practical things? So if we were to list them out, what are some, you want to start? What are some things that you think?
Yeah, I think identifying something small that you can spend 5 minutes on a day, maybe 10 minutes on a day, that you can kind of maybe check out or give your mind a rest. And whether that's like we've said, some things like a hobby like knitting or something like that you do. It could be a puzzle or a crossword. It could be, you watch an episode of a TV show, and just kind of check out during that. But to find something and try to be intentional about making that part of your day. And maybe it goes on the schedule. Maybe it goes on your calendar, and it could be meditation or yoga, like you've mentioned. But to try to find something and make it a priority, as much as I know that's hard to carve time for ourselves. I know that we have so much on our plates, and I know that there's so many voices telling us that, you're not doing enough for yourself, but like I've been thinking more about rest as like a fundamental like pillar of living
Yeah.
as a human.
Yeah.
And it just
As
a
any human.
huge thing that we need.
Right. Agreed.
And so I think I think it's important. And so it doesn't have to be this big thing, but to try to give yourself space where you can let your mind not be holding everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll add to that list a couple more if you don't mind. Like, I think taking a walk.
Yes, absolutely.
Like people talk about like the magic of taking a walk, and I think it's true. Partly because like you're in the air and you're moving, but then you're seeing all these other things and you're experiencing like nature, and so many good things about taking a walk. And so I think taking a walk, or even like you talked about scheduling something, like I think I've shared that years ago I used to go to like a Zumba class every Monday night, and the fact that it was like scheduled meant that everybody in the family just knew this was a thing that was going to happen.
Yeah.
So again, it was that passing of the baton. I didn't have to every time be like, oh, am I gonna? Da, da, da. It was nope. On Monday 6:30. This is where I went. The other thing I've discovered in the last couple of years is taking a bath, and how like delightful that is.
Yeah.
And because even in the shower, I'm like, like, okay, well, first I'll wash shampoo, and then all the things. But in a bath, you just get to lie there. And it's awesome. And unless you have tiny children, which I know this often happens, that people still bust in.
Right.
At least in my house, nobody is busting in. And so it's like, I just get to lie here in this beautiful, I get a candle and all the things. And so that has been a really lovely thing. So it doesn't have to be this fancy thing, but I think, how can you have somewhere like you're totally checked out, somewhere maybe you're like tuning in a little bit, right? Like doing some breath work, or, talking to your board or whatever that is, but something so that like, it's just for you.
Yeah.
It's just for you. And it doesn't have to be napping, it could be some of those things. I also think, I just keep thinking about with my experience that I'm in right now, the whole passing of the baton. And so how can you build some of those things in? Can you have, if you have the IanaCare app, can you ask once a week from your team or whoever, like to have somebody else come into your house? Or is there like an hour a week that it's like either everybody knows that it's okay and you're going to leave, or you bring somebody else in? Because I think that is a huge piece of it. Is like, if you are, even if you're over doing this thing, if you're still carrying the mental load of what's happening at your house, it's not restful.
Right.
So I think that adds into like, as supporters, right? That's something that supporters can do, is to say, hey, can I come to your house and hang out with your people so that you can go do whatever you want? And maybe that's go upstairs and take a nap. And maybe that's, go for a walk or whatever. That doesn't matter, but I'll be here. I'll take the baton. I feel like that's something that a supporter could do in those moments.
Yeah. Another thing that came to mind as you were talking there is just for us, the act of like checking in with ourselves and like being aware of what our needs are. Like, even if you can't in the moment find a way to rest, or find a way to like, it's not the right time for you to feel an emotion. Yeah. But to check in and know that those needs are there. Yeah. I think is still important, because it's like acknowledging that it's acknowledging your own needs. It's acknowledging you as a person. And it's like, so often our minds are not on us, and our minds are on the well-being of the person we're caring for. Yeah. And to like, as we've talked about before, like we are worthy of being whole people and living whole and complete lives. And like, I think just checking in with ourselves and even if we can't access what we need at that moment, knowing that need is there. And like, I think that's important. And I think that can be a first step.
That's huge. Yes. Yeah. I think, that's with the boardroom thing. That's, I know I think I've talked about on here. I have that Apollo Neuro bracelet thing. And that's one of my favorite things there, is that there's 7 settings, and I get to decide like, what does my body need right now? Do I need more energy? Do I need renewal? Do I need sleep? And I think that's a really good practice for me. Another thing that someone suggested is to do like an emotions journal every night. And I haven't been doing that, but instead, like when I finish doing the yoga, I just lie on the floor and think through my day.
Right.
And I think, okay, when this happened, I felt like this. And then when this happened, I felt like this. And when this happened, and it takes 5 minutes, whatever, but it's been really powerful for me to look for patterns.
Right.
And to look for things like, oh, wow, I often, when I like the word worried, how often does the word worried come up in relationship to Sean?
Right.
How often does the word like delighted come up when I'm in relationship to Maya? Like it's been really beautiful to like see those patterns and to be like, oh, wow. And to realize like, wow, in this one day, I had that whole range of emotions.
Yeah. No wonder I'm exhausted.
Right. But also to be like, it's not just like, it was a great day. It was a terrible day. Like,
both can happen in the same day.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like 75 emotions in one day, right?
Right.
And so that's been really, and I don't do anything with it necessarily, but it's just like, it's good for me to notice and to see those patterns and to think and to just, I think, like you said, just to be aware so that next time I'm like, okay, when this happens, I tend to get worried. Therefore, what can I do with that? Yeah. So I think you're right. Just tuning into our emotions can help us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else for supporters, I think might just be, listening to this and recognizing that rest is more than just for us as caregivers. It's more than just a nap or a spa. Like I remember when I needed that break for the burnout, I had someone say, "You're burnout? Okay, here's a spa gift card," which I still haven't used. Right. And not that I'm sad about having spa gift cards in my pocket, but like it was deeper than that. Like I needed more than a massage, And so to think about like if what kind of rest can you help? What kind of things can you say when you're talking to your caregiving people? Not just like, oh, are you sleeping enough? Oh, are you, to say like, can you, like we said, I'd love to come over and do whatever so that you can have an hour to yourself.
Right.
Or again, every time like they take out, like my aunt came over and did some yard work the other day. And oh my gosh, that just made me so happy.
Yeah.
So it's like that crosses something off my internal list, which helps me to rest.
Yeah.
So just continuing to show up for caregivers and to realize that the mental load needs to be alleviated as well. It's not just like, oh, go lie down and take a nap.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And also the awareness and understanding that like, okay, you're supposed to be exhausted and tired as a caregiver, and yet you're out up in the mountains doing stuff. What's that disconnect? But it's those can be restful and restorative things in different ways, and we need a variety of ways to seek out that rest in our lives. Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, speaking of rest, I think it's probably time for my 10 a.m. nap.
Yeah, absolutely. You keep doing what you need to recover and hopefully bounce back soon.
Thank you. I hope so. But congratulations to both of us on our 50th. This is very exciting.
Well done.
I wanted to say one last quick thing. There's a Instagram account called the Nap Ministry. I don't know if you've seen this, but they are all about resting.
Nice.
And they're sort of all about like the world, the man capitalism is trying to make us burn ourselves out and we need to rest. So that's and there's a book coming out in October by that author about rest.
Nice.
So that might be an interesting one to follow.
Yeah.
The Nap
Sounds like a
Ministry.
Great tip.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks.
Sure.
All right.
Thanks for talking.
Yeah. Thanks for the conversation. It's been really good.
Yeah. All right. Talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye.
Sounds good. Bye.
You've been listening to In Sickness. Find us online at insickness.care or on Instagram at insicknesspodcast. You can send your questions and comments to insicknesspodcast@gmail.com. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend or fellow caregiver, or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening, and take care.